Hello, everyone. Thank you very much for choosing to spend part of your Friday with us. My name is Lisette Nonalaya. I work for the World Trade Organization, and I'm very honored and privileged to welcome you to today's event that marks the 20th anniversary of the regional trade policy courses. For those who may not be aware, I wish to underline that this session is being recorded. Also, interpretation is available, so please select the language you would like to follow us. Thank you for taking the time to answer to the polls that were displayed. From the answers received, we can see that there is broad diversity in the attendees present, both by region as well as by affiliation. The majority of you are connecting from Africa and Asia, and I can say that 70% is RTPC alumni. Before we get started, I wish to remind you all that today's program was circulated along with a flyer on the invitation. With these many words, I invite Deputy Director Zhang to provide the introductory remarks of this event. TDE Zhang, you have the floor.
Thank you, Lisette. Dr. Patrick Lowe, distinguished former RTPC academic partners, distinguished RTPC alumni, colleagues from the Institute for Trade and Technical Cooperation, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to welcome you all to this online event commemorating 20 years of the regional trade policy courses. I'm very pleased to learn that we had more than 150 people registered to attend. The WTO and its predecessor, the GATT, have organized trade policy courses for more than 65 years. 20 years ago, a new product was launched by the WTO, the first regional trade policy course, RTPC, in Africa. Since then, 85 RTPCs have been held across 7 regions, building the capacity of more than 2,300 government officials. Graduates from RTPCs have gone on to put their acquired knowledge to good use, strengthening the trade capacities of their governments. They have continued to distinguish their careers, including a few who have become representative of their governments to the WTO. It is a pleasure to have a high number of alumni from past RTPCs join us today through this Zoom transmission and through the YouTube channel. We are also honored to have representatives from several of the academic partners that have participated in the design and the delivery of these courses over the years. Their engagement and the support have been a crucial factor to guarantee the quality and the relevance of the content of RTPCs. This is a good occasion to recognize the members of the WTO Secretariat who were directly involved in the launch of the first RTPCs in 2002, including the late Mike Moore, who was the WTO Director General at that time, as well as Patrick Lowe, who is joining us today. Let me also congratulate the team of the Training Institute at that time, what is now the WTO Institute for Training and Technical Cooperation, and its RTPC unit, as well as the many members of WTO Secretariat staff who have contributed to these courses through the years. RTPC is a central element in our offer of technical assistance to WTO members and observers. These courses have evolved over time, both in content and format. One thing that has not changed is the effort that the Secretariat puts into ensuring the high quality of these courses. Regional trade policy courses, RTPCs, serve multiple objectives. As many other WTO training and technical assistance activities, their aim is to build capacity by deepening government officials' understanding of the WTO agreements and by strengthening their ability to undertake WTO work. RTPCs are also unique in placing a specific focus on the regional trade policy context and its linkage with the WTO. This is done through the participation of regional academics and the policy specialists who co-lecture with WTO officials. RTPCs enable participants to immerse themselves in the work of the WTO. The courses provide a unique opportunity for hands-on learning about the multilateral trading system. RTPCs offer not only the legal side of the WTO agreement, but also the economic and the policy implications of these rules and the disciplines. The knowledge, skills, and experience gained assist participants in shaping the trade policies of their government. I wish to highlight that more than 79% of WTO TA activities are funded through voluntary contributions and partnerships. In this specific case of RTPCs, these courses are fully funded by voluntary contributions and partnerships. I therefore take this opportunity to thank all the donors that have made voluntary contributions through the years, as well as our regional partners that allow us to organize courses such as the RTPCs. Let me conclude by thanking you all for joining us to commemorate 20 years of the RTPCs, which represent the important component of our trade capacity building programs. Thank you.
Thank you, DDG Shang. Let me now give the floor to Dr. Patrick Lowe, former chief economist at the WTO, who will present the origins of the regional trade policy courses. Dr. Lowe, you have the floor.
Thank you very much indeed. And I'd like to start by thanking Jorge and his team for the invitation to participate in this event and to think about what happened 2 decades ago and remembering those events as well as the people that were instrumental in making the RTPCs a reality. I will say a little bit about context, a little bit about the concept. I'll refer to some of the challenges we had, and also a little bit about the outcome. But the outcome is what Jorge is going to talk to us about, how it progressed and evolved. So the context, I think it's probably worth just remembering that following the Uruguay round and the single undertaking embodied in the Uruguay round, there was a certain amount of disquiet among many developing countries about the fact that they had suddenly accumulated a whole range of obligations that they felt they hadn't necessarily participated in. And this was what launched the so-called implementation debate, when developing countries put on the table a variety of proposals for modifying the rules. This was a very difficult conversation, and it really didn't go very far. But it reflected this sense that I think this is what the reason I'm mentioning all this is because Mike Moore, as Director General, was very aware of this. And if you look at the declaration launching the Doha round, you'll see that it's very intensive in development provisions. And that was, again, partly a reflection of that. So I think that was very much in Mike Moore's mind. We had some internal discussions about the concept of a regional trade policy course in 2021. But given the hectic launch of the Doha round, which was finally launched in November 2021, not much else happened. And then things got going early in 2022. I was Mike Moore's chief of staff at the time, and so I had a front row seat on what was going on and how this all developed. The concept, something about the concept. The initiative and underlying conception of RTPCs would never have taken off without Mike Moore's determination and belief that we needed to find a way of making our training offerings more inclusive and relevant to local trade and development challenges. He believed there needed to be cooperation on the supply side with the receiving end of the technical cooperation initiatives. And the RTC concept offered an opportunity to try out the idea. So the thinking that was really informing Mike Moore's view of this was that we needed to do more in terms of local content in contributing to learning and familiarization with the multilateral trading system among developing country officials and policymakers. And the training process should be more relevant to and connected with the challenges on the ground facing developing countries and the regions in which they operated. So there were basically three ways that this found expression in the concept of the RTPC. The first was to locate courses within regions in local institutions. The second was to organize joint management and joint teaching of the courses. And the third was to include a course requirement for an analytical piece of work by the participants in the course in analyzing what was going on in a particular area of policy relevant to their country or their region. And so it was an attempt to intensify the engagement of the participants in the whole process. When you look back, I think this was a bold initiative for its time, involving a sharing with the putative beneficiaries of decision-making authority, as well as responsibility for the delivery of a technical assistance offering. The planning had been terribly hasty because Mike Moore was determined to get this done before he quit office in September, well, at the end of August in 2022. And so the location, so all this was done with a certain amount of haste and for WTO quite somewhat irregular way. And the locations for the first courses in Africa, we started with Africa. There was no intention to stop with Africa. The whole idea, if this was going to work, was it would go continental, transcontinental. But for the first courses were driven largely, the choice of locations actually was driven largely by local contacts, personal contacts. In the Moroccan case, the Geneva ambassador at the time, Nasser Benjeloun Toumi, seized on the idea and pushed it both in the capital and in Geneva for a Casablanca location for the first French-speaking African course. And that's where it actually ended up. In Kenya's case, Geneva Ambassador Amina Mohammed and her trade minister, Nicholas Biwa, were very active pushing in Nairobi. This ended up with a visit to Kenya from the Director General and the then chairman of the General Council, Ambassador Sergio Maki, to seal the deal. Although, of course, the council chairman was doing this under his own responsibility and not on behalf of the membership at large. Some of the challenges. There were some folk questioning the whole initiative in regard to its practicality, including trying to get this going in such a short time frame. The RTPCs were going to rely to a large degree on long-standing arrangements and models from the Geneva TPCs. And this was the saving grace, really. This would not have been possible if we hadn't been able to piggyback on a lot of tried out, well-tried concepts and in terms of substance and of approach. There was also some questioning, quite reasonably, when you look back, of the manner in which the locational decisions were taken. So the response to this criticism was, look, these are experimental. We've no idea whether this is going to work. Give us a chance. Let's see what happens. And if it works, there will be no question of sticking with these locations. There will be a rotation of locations. So with those two arguments, I think people said, okay, let's see what's going to happen. Another challenge was the financing of the courses, since they were not in the budget. This is why I say it was going to be unusual. They weren't in the budget, and that problem existed till the very last minute and was only solved by some concerted lobbying from various quarters. Within the Secretariat, it was great to see the level of support. There was considerable support and goodwill amongst the members of the Secretariat. There were some exceptions. There were some people who were naysaying, who didn't want to see it done, but there was a sufficient number of officials spread around the Secretariat to get the necessary contribution from our side to make these courses work. In the end, the Moroccan course didn't include any local resource persons, but that was because they couldn't find any. At least they couldn't find enough. And at the end, there were really virtually none. The Kenyan one, on the other hand, involved a lot of joint teaching with people who knew what they were talking about from all over the English-speaking Africa. So if you look at that program, I looked back at it the other day, and there's hardly any lectures which weren't joint taught by the Secretariat and by local, and I did some of that, and it's very rewarding because there's a learning process for the teachers as well. It really was, and I think that for me that was sort of the vindication of the whole idea. Then there was a lively discussion regarding cost effectiveness, which took place towards the end, and the argument was, this is just too expensive. We can't afford this. But when the analysis was done properly, which included attributing existing on-budget items in the WTO's budget, then it changed the picture. So if you did a real cost analysis, rather than looking about where the money came from, you ended up with a result that actually the regional courses were a little less expensive than the Geneva ones. So we put to sleep the idea that this was an unaffordable enterprise. So finally, so this all happened. I mean, these courses went on, and they if I remember rightly, they finished in July, I think. Mike Moore was leaving at the end of August. He said, before he left, he said, we need an assessment. We need an independent external assessment of this to see if it has worked. And that assessment is an official document of the Committee on Trade and Development, issued in October 2022, when Dr. Superchai had taken over as Director General, and he looked at the report. He talked around to people, and he decided that this was worth continuing with. So it was his decision to continue the program because he was then in charge, and Mike Moore had left the institution. The report, actually, I was looking at it again, is quite candid in identifying the challenges facing RTPs, as well as their strengths and their advantages. And on the basis of that, on the basis basically of the Nairobi course, because there wasn't really a sensible report coming in yet from Morocco. And so overall, it was a positive report. And that is what convinced Dr. Superchai that this was a worthwhile pursuit. So 20 years on, the rest is history for Jorge. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Lowe. Let me now give the floor to Mr. Jorge Castro, Chief of the Course Design and Training Section of the Institute for Training and Technical Cooperation, who will give a brief presentation on the evolution of regional trade policy courses. Jorge, you have the floor.
Thank you, Lisette. Good afternoon to everybody, and thanks to Patrick Lowe for those memories and insights into the context and origin of the WTO's regional trade policy courses. I've been asked to walk you all through the evolution of the RTPCs over the past 20 years. In my region of the world, there's a famous song that says that 20 years are nothing, but they seem to have been something in the case of the RTPCs. So starting in 2003, this was the year of the WTO's 5th Ministerial Conference at Cancun, and Dr. Superchai Panishpakdi, as Dr. Lowe mentioned, was the WTO Director General at the time. It was also a year of sequels. In popular movies, there were sequels to Matrix, Charlie's Angels, and The Lord of the Rings, released that year. And 2003 was also the year in which we launched a sequel to our successful RTPC in Nairobi, in partnership and continued partnership with the University of Nairobi. We also held, and that would become a practice, 3-day workshops in Geneva with regional specialists in preparation for the following year's RTPCs. So after this bridge year of 2003, in 2004, we hit what at the time was a record number of 4 RTPCs. A continued one in Nairobi with our partnership with the University of Nairobi for English-speaking Africa, one in Rabat for French-speaking Africa in partnership with the University Mohammed V, Susi, one in Kingston for the Caribbean in partnership with the University of the West Indies, and one in Hong Kong, China for Asia Pacific in partnership with the University of Hong Kong. This started the process of regular selection of academic partners in each of the regions based on the principle of rotation that was described by Patrick a few minutes ago. Again, in 2004, we held 3-day workshops in Geneva with regional specialists in preparation for the following year's RTPCs, including discussions between WTO Secretariat lecturers and the regional experts involved in the joint delivery of the courses. 2005 was the year of the WTO 6th Ministerial Conference in Hong Kong. At that time, Pascal Lamy became the WTO Director General. YouTube was launched that year. That same year, 2005, we hit a new record with 5 RTPCs organized. Of these courses, 3 were in continuation with previous partnerships, with our partners in Rabat for French-speaking Africa, with our partners in Kingston for the Caribbean, and with our partners in Hong Kong, China for Asia and the Pacific. We also started 2 new academic partnerships for RTPCs, one in Windhoek with the University of Namibia for English-speaking Africa to take over the previous partnership in Nairobi, and one in Santiago de Chile with the University of Chile for Latin America, the first RTPC launched in that region. Again, 3-day workshops took place in Geneva and were held with regional specialists in preparation for the next year's RTPCs. 2006 was the year in which Jack Dorsey sent the first tweet and Facebook was open to the public. That year, we were again able to hold 5 RTPCs as in the previous year and using the same partnerships. So again, one with the University of Namibia, one with the University in Rabat, one with the University of the West Indies, the University of Hong Kong, and one in Latin America with the University of Chile. In 2007, the first iPhone was launched. Vietnam and Tonga became the 150 and 151st WTO members. And that year we held only 3 RTPCs. There's always been a friction at the time when we have the renewal of the process of selecting partners, and very often we lose some months in the process. And in that case, some of our partnerships had come to an end, having concluded their cycle. We began the practice then of having 3-year cycles with the possibility of extending for a 4th year at the request of the university. That year, 2007, we held an RTPC with the National University of Singapore that was selected as a new partner for the Asia-Pacific region. We also held courses in Santiago de Chile with the University of Chile for Latin America and with the University of Namibia for English-speaking African countries. Again, we carried 3-day preparatory workshops in 2007, and 51 academics attended these workshops, each one lasting 3 days. 2008 was the year when the CERN's Large Hadron Collider, the world's largest particle accelerator, was officially inaugurated. Ukraine and Cabo Verde became the 152 and 153rd WTO members. That year, we organized 3 RTPCs, one in continuation of our partnerships in Singapore and one in Jamaica for the Caribbean region, but we also started a new partnership with the University of Dahomey, Calavi in Cotonou, Benin, for French-speaking Africa. This was, by the way, the first partnership with a university in an LDC for the development and delivery of an RTPC, and a successful one at that. It was also the year 2008 when the ITTC introduced the concept of progressive learning, with each training activity being part of an increasingly more advanced training path. From that moment on, RTPCs have been regarded as the second step of a coordinated and sequential three-step approach to generalist training on WTO topics. The first step being an e-training introductory course or a face-to-face introductory course for LDCs. That first step is followed for successful participants by participation in RTPCs. And the third step is now the advanced trade policy courses that take place at the WTO in Geneva. In 2008, the ITTC also introduced the idea of appointing official patrons or patronesses for each RTPC and for each Geneva-based advanced trade policy courses to provide inspiration, guidance, and leadership to the participants in the courses, one feature that participants tend to appreciate. 3 preparatory workshops were again held in Geneva in 2008, one for each of the RTPCs. 2009 was the year of the WTO's 7th Ministerial Conference in Geneva. Pascal Lamy was re-elected for a second term as WTO Director General. That year, 2009, 4 RTPCs were implemented, 2 in continuation with our previous partnerships in Singapore for the Asia-Pacific region and in Benin for French-speaking Africa. 2 were the result of new partnerships, one with the Universidad Sergio Arboleda in Colombia for Latin America, and one with the University of Swaziland in Eswatini for English-speaking Africa. La Universidad Sergio Arboleda was the first one to introduce the use of a virtual classroom, an electronic platform for storing all the training materials used in the course. As well as facilitating the use of participants and trainers, the virtual classroom greatly reduced the amount of paper used during an RTPC. La Universidad Sergio Arboleda not only introduced the virtual classroom for RTPCs, but also hosted and supported the platforms for RTPCs in other regions. 4 3-day preparatory workshops were held at the WTO in 2009, one for each of the following RTPCs. As usual, the purpose of these workshops was to bring together the academics that would be co-delivering the RTPC and the WTO Secretariat officials. In 2010, a football World Cup took place for the first time in Africa. 4 RTPCs were held that year for the same regions and with the same partners as the preceding years. Singapore for Asia Pacific, Benin for French-speaking Africa, Colombia for Latin America, and Eswatini for English-speaking Africa. 4 RTPC workshops were also held at the WTO in 2010. 2011 was the year of the WTO's 8th Ministerial Conference in Geneva. Again, 4 RTPCs were delivered that year, the same number as in the 2 preceding years. 3 of them with our previous partners, the University of Abomey Calavi in Benin, la Universidad Sergio Arboleda in Colombia, and the University of Swaziland in Eswatini. The 4th RTPC was the first time in partnership with the Center for WTO Studies at the Indian Institute of Foreign Trade in New Delhi for the Asia-Pacific region. Again, we held 4 preparatory workshops in Geneva to assist regional and WTO resource persons prepare their delivery. 2012, Montenegro, Russia, and Vanuatu became WTO members. According to the Mayan calendar, the end of the world was expected that year. Instead, we had a major transformation of RTPCs in 2012 to adapt their content to their intermediate level, but also to shorten their duration from 12 to 8 weeks. Certain modules were shortened, others were eliminated. The overall objectives of the RTPCs, however, that of helping understand the WTO agreements, enhancing the understanding of trade policies, and others remain the same. The change was motivated by a need to reduce cost with the aim of offering RTPCs in each of the 7 regions covering WTO TA beneficiaries. With those reforms, RTPCs were introduced for the first time in 2 new regions in 2012, the Middle East and Arab countries, and the Central and Eastern Europe and Central Asian and Caucasus countries, CECAC. Previous to that, only short trade policy courses of 4 to 5 week duration had been organized in these regions in 2010 and 2011. Unfortunately, no RTPC took place in the Caribbean in 2012 due to an insufficient number of applications received. In summary, we had 5 RTPCs in 2012, in Latin America, in Colombia, in Swaziland, University of Swaziland, Eswatini for English-speaking Africa. In Istanbul, with Istanbul Bilgi University, our new partner for the CCAC region. In New Delhi for the Asia-Pacific region. And finally, with the IMF Middle East Center for Economics and Finance in Kuwait, our new partner for the Arab and Middle Eastern region. In 2003, that was the year of the WTO's 9th Ministerial Conference in Bali. Roberto Acevedo took over as WTO Director General. Laos and Tajikistan became WTO members. That year, we delivered 4 RTPCs, one less than the previous year, as some partnerships came to an end. 2 RTPCs in 2013 were with previous partners, Istanbul Bilgi University for CCAC and the Indian Institute of Foreign Trade for Asia Pacific. We also started new partnerships with the École Supérieure de Commerce de Tunis, Université de la Manuba for French-speaking Africa, and with the University of Botswana for English-speaking Africa. A final exam was introduced in all RTPCs beginning in 2013. 2014, Yemen became the WTO's 160th member. It was the first year we managed to deliver 7 RTPCs, 1 for each region with TA beneficiaries, 4 with previous partners in Tunis, in Botswana, in Turkey, and in India. We also started new partnerships with the University of West Indies in Barbados, UWI, and with La Universidad Andina Simón Bolívar in Ecuador for Latin America, and with the Sultan Qaboos University in Oman for the Arab and Middle Eastern region. For the first time, all beneficiary countries in every region were offered access to a face-to-face intermediate course for generalists. As part of the fine-tuning of the pedagogical method used, a one-day midterm revision was also introduced in the RTPC programs to prepare participants for the final exam. 2015 was the year of the WTO's 10th Ministerial Conference in Nairobi, the venue of one of our initial RTPCs in 2002. Seychelles and Kazakhstan became the WTO's 161 and 162 member. A vital photo sparked a worldwide debate into whether a dress was blue and black or white and gold. More significantly, 196 parties reached an international binding agreement on climate change at the COP21 conference in Paris. Once again, in 2015, we managed to deliver 7 RTPCs, 1 for each region with TA beneficiaries. 6 of those delivered with the same partners and in 2015. So in Tunis, in Barbados, in Botswana, in Turkey, and in Ecuador, as well as in Oman. The 7th RTPC was delivered in partnership with the International Institute for Trade and Development at Chulalongkorn University in Bangkok for the Asia-Pacific region, after our partnership with the Indian Institute of Foreign Trade in New Delhi had come to an end. In 2016, Liberia and Afghanistan became the WTO's 163rd and 164th member. The Zika virus emerged as a major global health threat. That year, 2016, the Secretariat implemented 6 RTPCs, 1 less than in 2015, as our partnership with Istanbul Bilgi University came to an end. A new partner to host the course for the CCAC region was identified, but not early enough to organize the course before the year end. In 2017, the year of the WTO's 11th Ministerial Conference in Buenos Aires, Roberto Acevedo was reelected for a second term as WTO Director General, and once again, we were able to deliver 6 RTPCs. Of those 6 RTPCs, 4 with the same partners and in the year before, University of West Indies in Barbados, Universidad Andina Simón Bolívar in Ecuador, the International Institute for Trade and Development in Bangkok, and the Sultan Qaboos University in Oman. The 2 other RTPCs were delivered in partnership, respectively, with the University of International Business in Almaty, Kazakhstan, for the CCAC region, and the École Nationale Supérieure de Statistique et d'Économie Appliquée in Abidjan, Côte d'Ivoire, for French-speaking Africa. In 2018, we implemented 4 RTPCs, 2 less than in the previous 2 years. 3 with the same partners as the year before, Abidjan, Almaty, and Bangkok, and the other RTPC in partnership with the University of Mauritius in Redui for English-speaking Africa. In 2019, the Secretariat implemented 5 RTPCs, 1 more than the previous year. Of these 5 RTPCs, 3 were delivered with the same partners as in the year before. In Abidjan, for French-speaking Africa, in Mauritius for English-speaking Africa, and in Almaty for the SICAC region. The 2 other RTPCs were delivered in partnership with the Institute of International Relations Diplomatic Academy of the Caribbean at UI in Trinidad and Tobago for the Caribbean, and with el Colegio de México in Ciudad de México for the Latin American region. And then we get to 2020, which was, to put it mildly, a very particular year. We had planned a full agenda of RTPCs for 2020. The year began successfully with an RTPC delivered with our partners in Abidjan for French-speaking Africa. That course was cut short in mid-March 2020 in anticipation of travel restrictions that would impede the orderly return of participants to their home countries. That was a timely decision, and we were extremely fortunate to have had the collaboration of the École Nationale Supérieure in Abidjan during that period, including in supporting participants to safely return to their countries. Due to the prevailing uncertainty, we planned for the resumption of in-person RTPCs later in the year, as it was unclear for how long the travel restrictions and the social distancing rules would stay in place. We were wrong. By the second quarter of the year, we started to look into alternatives to face-and-face delivery to meet the demands from beneficiaries. A first online RTPC was launched as a pilot activity in August 2020 for the Caribbean region. The curriculum of the 8-week RTPC was converted into a 14-week-long program to take into account the limitations of online activities and with the assumption that participants would follow this course part-time. This activity proved successful, and due to the continuing conditions, a second online RTPC was launched in December 2020, this time for the Arab and Middle Eastern region. This course was followed by an online RTPC for English-speaking Africa, delivered in partnership with the University of Mauritius, which took place in mid-2021, and one for the Latin American region, in partnership with el Colegio de México for the Latin American region in 2021. Attempts were made in 2022 to organize online RTPCs for the SICAC region in partnership with the University of International Business in Almaty, and for the Caribbean region in partnership with the University of the West Indies in Trinidad and Tobago. Both failed due to an extremely low number of participants' nominations. We were able, however, to hold an online RTPC for Asia and the Pacific in partnership with the Shanghai University of International Business and Economics in mid-2022. My colleague Vonai Moyambo, who is the head of the RTPC unit, will now share her views on some of the lessons learned and the challenges RTPCs and the Secretariat's TA activities face in the future. I would just note as a summary how RTPCs have evolved over these past 2 decades, being permanently updated and revised, not in a drastic manner, except perhaps during the pandemic when abrupt change was forced upon us, but rather in a gradual manner, taking stock of lessons learned, keeping in mind the need to continue in delivering the fundamental objectives while adapting to a time of increased demand and diminishing resources. The curriculum of the course, the training materials, and the teaching methods have all been gradually updated in this manner. To a great extent, this has been possible thanks to the valuable feedback received from our academic partners and participants, through the important contribution of our colleagues in the ITTC's monitoring and evaluation section, and through the guidance we received from our members, both beneficiaries and donors. Thank you all.
Thank you, Jorge. Now, we will display a video with testimonials from 5 RTPC former academic coordinators from different regions regarding the benefits for their institutions in partnering with the WTO to host an RTPC, and to share with us any programs they have developed as a result of the partnership. Let's watch the video. Colleagues, we are ready.
Istanbul Big University, in partnership with the World Trade Organization and the Turkish government, organized 5 consecutive regional trade policy courses from 2010 to 2015 for government officials from Central and Eastern Europe, Central Asia, and Caucasus countries. The organization of these regional trade policy courses in this magic formula of 3 institutions which have contributed to the success of the regional trade policy courses, in fact, empowered the university to not only enrich the way in which it delivers its teaching courses, but at the same time allowed us to increase our library resources. At the same time, it has given us new skills to teach trade-related courses, not just to the student body, but also different communities in our society. These different communities are very important because, as we know, one of the very important factors of WTO trade-related activities is also allowing creating an awareness for international trade matters. Therefore, by organizing these courses, Istanbul Big University was able to realize the most important topics and the most actual topics of international trade by learning the rules and principles, but also trying to make them on a practical aspect for companies, for businesses, and also different stakeholders which are interested in trade matters. Therefore, as an academic coordinator of all these 5 courses that we have organized together, I believe that this is a true empowerment and capacity building, not just for the country's government officials for trade matters, but also for the academic institution which is partnering with the World Trade Organization. In fact, while we were organizing these courses, we felt the support of the World Trade Organization so much that we even were able to host at the time, the Director General of the World Trade Organization, Mr. Pascal Lamy, at the university premises, together with the esteemed representatives of Permanent Mission of Turkey to the World Trade Organization and the Turkish government. Apart from these capacity building and empowerment that comes with the World Trade Organization regional trade policy courses, which makes Istanbul Big University as the main resource item for any matter that is related to trade whenever something happens in Turkey, I'm proud to say that Istanbul Big University academics are always the ones that are being turned to get the answers for international trade matters. So we have learned how to reach out to communities in our country that are related for trade, but at the same time, we have catered this knowledge to our student body. We were able to apply for the WTO chair call for applications back in 2014 with the empowerment that we got from the regional trade policy courses. And I'm proud to say today that Istanbul Big University is currently hosting the WTO chair, and I myself am acting as a WTO chair holder, which is again an empowerment which is a consequence of the regional trade policy courses. With this empowerment, we were able to establish a research center for international trade law and arbitration at the university, where we are undertaking curriculum development, outreach activities, and academic research. But at the same time, our students have found the courage and strength to apply for the first time to the John Jackson Moot Court competition back a couple of years ago, where at their first attempts, they were the runner-up in global rounds in Geneva, and they have succeeded in winning 2 consecutive European regional rounds.
Greetings from Blantyre, Malawi, from where I will highlight some of the benefits that the University of Botswana derived from hosting regional trade policy courses for English-speaking Africa region from 2013 to 2016. In its bid document, the University of Botswana indicated that through hosting of the RTPCs, it sought to contribute to national and international capacity building. The University of Botswana also indicated that it seeks to provide an opportunity for its academic staff to develop through participation in the administrative arrangements and in lecturing during the RTPC. The RTPCs were also seen as an opportunity for academic staff to develop links and collaborate with lecturers from other parts of Africa and WTO officials. In 2016, or at the end of the 2016 RTPC, we took note that 121 government officials from Africa had been trained at the University of Botswana. 18 of these were from Botswana. And the University of Botswana, therefore, had contributed to national and international capacity building. In fact, when the government of Botswana urged the University of Botswana to consider bidding to host the RTPCs, it indicated that its primary objective was to fast-track capacity building across government ministries and departments that deal with international trade issues. And the University of Botswana was therefore very proud to have enabled the government of Botswana to achieve this objective of fast-tracking capacity building across various government departments and ministries that deal with international trade issues. The university is, after all, fully sponsored by the government of Botswana. The RTPCs also provided an opportunity for this. Finally, also afforded the University of Botswana an opportunity to showcase its state-of-the-art facilities and a convivial and congenial environment and atmosphere for conduct of training of this nature. A good number of the participants at the RTPCs have since applied to the University of Botswana for further training in various programs. This is no doubt due to the favorable impression they formed of the University of Botswana as an institution and Botswana as a host country for further training. This, I think, was a great benefit to us. Thank you very much.
Bonjour, professeur Asdin Roufran de l'Université Mohamed V, Rabat, Maroc. J'ai le plaisir de partager avec vous l'expérience de notre université en matière d'organisation du cours régional de politique commerciale au profit des pays africains francophones. Les bénéfices de ce cours sont multiples. Il s'agit premièrement du renforcement des capacités de notre université dans les domaines de la formation et de recherche sur les questions ayant trait au commerce international et relevant des compétences de l'OMC. Deuxième bénéfice, c'est le développement de relations avec les experts de l'OMC et les experts régionaux et la construction de liens personnels et fonctionnels avec celles et ceux qui ont participé au cours régional de politique commerciale. Troisième bénéfice, c'est la dotation de notre université d'un fonds documentaire spécialisé dans les questions relevant de l'Organisation mondiale du commerce. S'agissant maintenant des programmes spécifiques que nous avons développés dans le cadre de ce partenariat, il convient de signaler surtout la mise en place d'un programme de formation au niveau du master, un programme de formation pluridisciplinaire ouvert aux étudiants marocains et ceux originaires de l'Afrique subsaharienne. Et parallèlement au lancement de ce programme de formation, nous avons pu capitaliser dans le prolongement de l'organisation du cours régional de politique commerciale avec une chaire de l'Organisation mondiale du commerce qui a été attribuée à notre université dans le cadre de la phase 1 du programme des chaires de l'OMC. Last but not least, comme on dit, nous avons pu aussi, dans le cadre de ce partenariat, lancer un centre de référence de l'OMC au sein de notre université qui permet l'interaction entre les chercheurs et les décideurs et qui favorise l'organisation de manifestations scientifiques rassemblant plusieurs acteurs concernés par les problématiques du commerce international et par les questions relevant de la compétence de l'Organisation mondiale du commerce. Merci por votre écoute.
Hola, soy Michel Levy y durante el periodo 2014-2017 fui coordinador del curso regional de política comercial para los países de América Latina en la Universidad Avenida Simón Bolívar, sede Ecuador. Durante este periodo de tiempo, el programa nos aportó muchos temas positivos para la universidad y para el país. Primero acogimos a un selecto grupo de participantes de toda la región que vinieron durante cada año muy motivados a seguir durante 8 semanas un programa muy intensivo para aprender y mejorar su conocimiento sobre el OMC. Este tema de gestión de la OMC nos permitió además crear un vínculo directo entre los participantes y nuestra universidad que nos ha permitido lograr a su vez llegar a diferentes países de la región por el conocimiento que los participantes tuvieron de nuestra universidad. Por otra parte, estos vínculos que se crearon entre los participantes durante el curso les permitieron a ellos también generar una gran capacidad de red que se mantiene hasta la actualidad y que muchos participantes han logrado aprovecharla en temas especiales de negociaciones comerciales y de aplicación de temas de la OMC en sus respectivos países. En la actualidad, gracias a este curso y gracias a la aplicación que nuestra universidad hizo al programa de cátedras de la OMC, somos titulares de una cátedra OMC en el Ecuador y eso nos permite todavía proyectarnos más en los temas de comercio internacional. Felicito por estos 20 años al curso regional de política comercial de la OMC, a la OMC por organizarlo, a todos los participantes en los últimos 20 años y auguro que haya muchos más años del curso regional de política comercial y que siga siempre adelante con mucha experiencia, aprovechando lo mejor de cada participante y aprovechando lo mejor de esa maravillosa organización que es la OMC.
Bonjour, je suis Dr Feydou Kourouchal, enseignant-chercheur à l'École nationale supérieure de statistique et d'économie appliquée. J'ai été le coordonnateur des 4 éditions du CRPC organisées en Côte d'Ivoire, à l'UNCA, à l'attention des fonctionnaires de la région Afrique francophone. Parlant de bénéfices que ce partenariat a permis de tirer, il faut dire que l'UNCA à travers le CRPC, a réussi à étendre son réseau de professionnels et de chercheurs sur les questions de politique commerciale, a également permis de renforcer les capacités des enseignants-chercheurs de l'équipe de l'UNCA qui s'intéressent à ces questions de politique commerciale et d'intégration régionale. Et enfin, ce partenariat a permis de renforcer le fonds documentaire de l'école sur les questions de politique commerciale, notamment l'ouvrage de l'accord de l'OMC, les rapports annuels sur le commerce mondial, par exemple. S'agissant des programmes spécifiques, les réflexions sont en cours, mais nous espérons qu'à la rentrée 2023-2024 ou la rentrée suivante, ces programmes de formation vont voir le jour. Il s'agit d'un programme de master en formation initiale intitulé Politique publique, dont l'une des options sera politique commerciale. Les curricula sont en cours d'élaboration et nous entendons, dans la finalisation de ce processus, avoir l'appui et le soutien des formateurs de l'Institut de formation et de coopération technique de l'OMC en vue de sa validation. Et enfin, la création de certificats de formation sur des aspects spécifiques contenus dans le CRPC pour renforcer les capacités des fonctionnaires de la zone ouest africaine et enfin, déboucher sur la création de cette chaire OMC au sein de l'École nationale supérieure de statistique. Voici en gros les différents éléments que nous pouvons dire dans ce témoignage pour l'activité du 20e anniversaire du CRPC. Je vous remercie.
Thanks to the 5 former academic coordinators that have made the effort to record themselves and send their videos to us in order to participate in this ceremony. Now, we will display a video with testimonials from 5 RTPC alumni from different regions regarding their experience, what they've found particularly interesting about the RTPC, and how the RTPC impacted their professional lives. Let's watch this video together. Colleagues, we are ready.
I attended the very first trade policy course for Africa. This course took place at the Kenya Commercial Bank Training Center in Karen, Nairobi. I was Uganda's representative at this course, which was a course for both developing countries and least developed countries. Now, what I found very interesting or valuable about this course was it was a first for Africa. It was a first for the WTO itself, So this was a big thing. And what I also liked was, the range of participants chosen to participate. So we're about 15 or more government officials coming from a number of African countries, from the north, from the east, from the south, from the west. And that was really, valuable in terms of the choice of the participants. We spent 3 months on the campus in Karen. I also like the fact that every week were introduced to a new subject by new colleagues coming down from Geneva. So that was really a great thing, And if you recall, this was around 2002. So they delivered very impactful lectures because also the DDA, the Doha Development Agenda, had just been launched. So there's a lot of energy, there was a lot of momentum, a lot of enthusiasm. And I like the fact that it was not just the Geneva crowd coming to, exchange with us. It wasn't more, I don't call it a lecture, it was more of exchanges with the different government officials. But the fact that they had people from the region as well, who gave us a regional perspective from what we'd had from colleagues in Geneva. But also, like I said, we had a rich group of colleagues that were attending this particular training. So we also had experiences from the participants themselves, What we also got from there was not just the exchanges. The materials that we received from the course were excellent, excellent books, excellent reading, excellent research, Of course, in addition to what everybody that everyone who has done an RTPC knows, the Bible, In fact, up to today, like 20 years later, I still use my Bible from Karen, because of the way I scribbled. I know there's been new editions, but that for me is something that really made me understand the legal text and the legal regime of the WTO. How has this impacted my life professionally? Oh boy, it has. It really, really has. Immediately when I returned back to Uganda, remember the round had also been launched. I was part of the Interinstitutional Trade Committee. And so this also assisted me in assisting my country develop our negotiating positions as an LDC for the Doha round itself. Then I left immediately to do an LLM, which was also the first LLM on international trade law and policy and investment for Africa, which took place in Pretoria. So the knowledge I had just gained from the RTPC less than 6 months ago, it was gold, not only the material, but the knowledge itself. It really helped me cruise through that LLM, which is why then I ended up here in Geneva, because as part of that LLM, we had to do attachments in Geneva, either a mission or an international organization. So I came as part of with an academic attachment to the mission of Uganda. That's how I ended up in Geneva. Then immediately thereafter, I was invited to do an internship in the Intellectual Property Division. And a few months later, I was employed at the WTO. Little did I know that colleagues that I had just seen the year before in Karen would then be my colleagues at work, would help me grow through the system. Yeah, so for me, it was, it was a real journey. This is something that did impact my life. It's excellent. It's a great journey. It's a course that, has really directly impacted my life, and I'm sure impacted the lives of so many people.
So I was a young trade officer just joining the Ministry of Trade in Egypt. I heard about this regional trade policy course on WTO that would be taking place in Nairobi, Kenya. And my colleagues at the time said, well, there's the main course is in Geneva for 3 months. And I've thought to myself, well, yeah, but I've been to Geneva before. I've never been to Kenya. And from there, I went on the course for 3 months. I must say that it was one of the most remarkable experiences that I've had going to this 3-month course in Kenya, both on the personal level, but also professionally. Personally, it was the first time I visit another African country than my own, Egypt. And also, it was the first time to be in a course with fellow Africans as well. And it really opened my eye to the diversity and richness of the African continent and WTO experts who came to Kenya during this time. So overall, it was a great experience. It actually paved the way for me to join the WTO Secretariat, because right after the 3-month course, I was invited for an interview at the WTO and to work in ITTC, which I joined 6 months later, and I started delivering technical assistance and capacity building activities on the African continent, which allowed me also to visit my friends that I've met from the course, so in Zimbabwe, Zambia, Namibia, Ghana, etc.
I was attending RTPC for about 3 months in 2005, around summertime, in Hong Kong, China. Well, I think particularly for me, it was very useful and very helping, simply because that, China joined the WTO in 2001, and I started my WTO career shortly after that. I moved from what we call bilateral affairs to multilateral affairs. I was in charge of China-EU trade affairs before I joined the WTO department. So for me, it was a brand new world, and a lot of things I did not understand so well. So this RTPC training course has been a kind of eye-opening opportunity for me to really go through all the aspects of the system, its principles, its different agreements, how it functions, how people negotiate, what the importance of the system. I think so. On one side, this helps me to learn about the WTO, so enabling me to be to effectively represent China in future WTO negotiations and meetings. The second thing, I think it is extremely useful because it helped me to understand the importance, the beauty of the system and how it helped other countries to integrate into the system, to benefit from it, and to help their people lift up their living standards, and which was the thing happened for China after that all these years. So I think those are the things I find the RTPC very useful and very helpful. Yeah. It was a kind of eye-opener and also a kind of first step for my long path afterwards, my entire WTO or trade career afterwards. So the first thing is, of course, after 2005, I participated in RTPC. I was representing China for the next about 10 years, all the way to until end of 2014. As a Chinese official, first in Beijing, and then a senior trade diplomat in Chinese mission to the WTO. So I was doing all the things, and I was applying everything I have learned into my daily work, into the negotiations, meetings, talking to other people, making rules with others, so on and so forth. And after that, I changed my life path, became a professor and also a think tank the CEO on WTO, which is Friends of Multilateralism Group. So all the things actually started from, a little bit around the period where I started my RTPC. So that's the first kind of step to lay the foundation of my future work. That's very good for me, and I appreciate that very much.
Buenos días, mi nombre es Débora Cumes, de Guatemala. En el año 2005 atendí el curso regional de política comercial de la OMC, primer curso que se realizó en Latinoamérica, en Santiago de Chile, de forma conjunta con la Universidad de Chile. La experiencia ha sido gratificante. Conocí grandes colegas y amigos al día de hoy. El curso me dio todo el conocimiento vinculado a los temas de OMC, el espacio para poder dedicarme esos 3 meses a aprender. También me dio la seguridad de poder hablar en público y la seguridad también para negociar. Al regresar a Guatemala, mis jefes decidieron darme la oportunidad de iniciar las negociaciones de agricultura y el entrenamiento respectivo, por lo que fui negociadora en las negociaciones agrícolas. Hasta el día de hoy, 18 años después, sigo siendo negociadora agrícola. Estoy en la misión. También veo todos los temas vinculados a mercancías y las negociaciones de comercio electrónico. La experiencia ha sido gratificante y ha sido uno de los mejores cursos que he recibido durante mi carrera profesional.
I was one of the first cohorts of students who attended the Regional Trade Policy course in Jamaica. I think the year was 2004. And I think it was a really pivotal moment for me as it helped me identify trade policy as a long-term future professional opportunity. What I thought was really important and meaningful about the program is that it helped to blend local expertise from the region, from Jamaica, with WTO trade policy professionals who had a really global understanding of the impact of trade policy on development. And it allowed for some of the national concerns, regional concerns, to be integrated into the program. Of course, the RTPC really catapulted me into trade policy. And over the last 18 to 20 years, I've served my country, St. Lucia, as well as the region, and also served in other regions in helping to frame trade policy, as well as locate trade policy at the center of the development objectives of member states. I'm really happy that I've had an opportunity now to serve with Dr. Ngozi, Director General. I believe that this is a culmination of much of the efforts which WTO has in the past engaged to build capacity in different regions. And I'm hopeful that the RTPC will continue being an anchor for development of local talent, regional talent in trade policy, hopefully with an accent more towards inclusion and building support for previously excluded communities, as well as gender, as well as MISMEs. I think these new areas provide opportunities to ensure that trade policy is an instrument for inclusion, an instrument of development, and hopefully we could commend those new areas to future RTPC programs.
Thanks to the 5 RTPC alumni who contributed to these testimonials. Now let's continue with the program. Let me give the floor to Mrs. Bonai Muyambo, head of the Regional Trade Policy Courses, Regional Trade Policy Courses Unit of the Institute for Training and Technical Cooperation, that will give a brief presentation about the lessons learned during these 20 years of RTPCs. Bonai, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Lisette, and good afternoon to everybody. I think we've heard a lot about where the courses started, how they've evolved, and in terms of the fact that we've had 20 years, there've been a lot of lessons that we've been able to learn. And as was mentioned by Dr. Lowe, evaluating these courses started from the very beginning. But what we've done is really tried to improve on the way we design, develop, and plan our courses. With the endorsement of resource-based management in 2013, we've actually worked towards trying to improve the way we monitor our courses, and we really have been measuring for results and ensuring that what we do results in more effective efficient courses. So I will just briefly like to highlight the lessons that we've learned and how we've tried to adapt according in line with those lessons. The lessons learned have largely been in three areas, as with respect to our beneficiaries, which would be the WTO member and observer governments, trade officials that we train, the partners who are the regional academic institutions that host the RTPCs with the WTO, and then the course content, which is largely overseen by us, the TPC unit, in collaboration with WTO experts and regional experts. As it relates to our beneficiaries, the first thing has been mainly in the way that an individual can apply for these courses. In the past, what we do is when we announce a new RTPC, it goes through the mission here in Geneva and it is sent to a relevant ministry back home. Now, what we've learned from potential candidates is that sometimes these applications or the knowledge of these courses is limited to particular industries, for example, trade. And we know that trade in itself is quite a broad issue. A lot more ministries could be, or individuals in different ministries could be involved, for example, in customs. And so what we've done actually to try and address this is through our technical assistant management system, we now actually provide information of our courses online, which means that potentially we have a larger pool of potential participants who would be interested in these courses. For the moment, we are expecting to take this further by enabling individuals to actually apply directly online. So in the future, we expect that we would have a much larger pool of participants. And this is clearly different from 20 years ago, where obviously demand probably wasn't as great as it is today, but where those applying were probably limited just to trade ministries. So this is something that we've really been able to build upon in the past. As was already mentioned by my colleague, we introduced this progressive learning strategy. Now, what this has done has sort of adapted what used to be a 3-month, 12-week generalist course. So it's a general because it covers all the WTO issues. And it's now sort of been split across 3 different levels, covering 19 weeks. So we've spread it along 3 levels. So we have a deeper coverage of issues, we have a broader coverage of issues, and individuals can now decide how much learning they want to have, how far they want to go, and how deep they want to go. And this has really been something that we've learned from the fact that we have participants that are different, that require different levels of learning, that require to work in different ways. So this is something that we've really tried to learn from and to adapt the way we do the way we design our courses. Now, looking at our regional academic partners, and I think we've really heard already from them, and we heard also from my colleague that we've pretty much gone global. Initially, as Dr. Lowe said, then it was always the intention to go global. So we started with Africa, and now we've covering 7 different regions. And this is really in recognition of the fact that different regions have different requirements. They have different peculiarities. We know that within regions itself, countries also have different needs. So this is something that we continue to adapt even in the way that we design our courses. Most importantly, I think, is also this issue of value. And this is twofold. Firstly, from the monetary point of view, I think from the very beginning, as Dr. Lowe said, the WTO used to foot the majority of the bill. So we used to pay for their entire 3-month course. Now what we do is with our regional academic partners, we have a cost sharing. So the academic partner actually also contributes to some aspects of the delivery of the course. And this has been beneficial to us as the WTO, meaning that we can now hold more courses in more regions. It's also been beneficial in terms of the partners having more of a buy-in in the process. And then another a very important value-added element is obviously this issue of institutional capacity building. I don't have to repeat what has already been said by the institutions themselves. They've been able to build their capacity, not only of the individual resource persons, in the fact that they've been able to learn a lot from our WTO experts who co-lecture with them. Dr. Lowe also pointed to the fact that they, as WTO experts, can also learn from the people in the region. And also, we've seen that a lot of these institutions have been able to introduce new programs, master's programs, for example. They've now become internationally recognized. Individuals are now going to these universities for other master's programs because now they're aware that these institutions are well equipped, you know, in these particular areas. And this is something we have also learned, is that it's good for us to share these stories because it encourages others who have not yet partnered with us, who might have felt it was, you know, too difficult for them to do, but to see that it's doable and that there is a value added and there's a lot that can actually benefit, they can benefit from being a partner with us. And of course, we've also seen some of these institutions have been able to partner further with the WTO through WTO chairs programs, through research, etc. So I think this cannot be in any way underscored in terms of, you know, how much value is added for the institutions themselves. And then finally, looking at the course content, and this is where us as the Regional Trade Policy Courses Unit have sort of more of an oversight, working together with the WTO experts as well as the regional experts. When it comes to content design, and we've really seen and evolved from 20 years ago. We know that trade itself has seen a lot more issues included. And so as a result, we've tried to adapt to this. But not only that, our beneficiaries themselves, their needs are changing. The realities of the world are changing. And as was mentioned by my colleague, the past 2 years, particularly during the COVID period, where we've had to adapt the way we deliver courses, we had 5 RTPCs, which meant that we were holding courses for a longer period of time, 14 weeks, with much less content. This meant that we had to be much more innovative in the way that we deliver these courses because it's online. How do you keep people engaged? And there are a lot of lessons that we've learned from this approach. And of course, going forward, it's clear both from beneficiaries, both as from us as well as organizers, as well as from partners, that face-to-face is the preferred way to continue. And this is what we're going to be doing going forward. But we do and definitely will be taking forward some of those elements that worked well in the e-courses and blending them with our face-to-face courses so that we make them more effective and efficient. For example, with these new issues that are now being discussed in the WTO and that are important for some regions like e-commerce, you know, sometimes it's too expensive to send a person just to deliver for, let's say, a 2-hour session. But because it's important, what we can do now is get those individuals to be involved remotely. So these are the type of things that we can use and that we've learned we can actually improve our courses as they exist. Another thing is building the capacity of our trainers. It's not just about giving information. It's making sure that that information is digestible to the participants. And we know as adults, it's much more difficult to remain engaged for long periods of time. And so as a result, we have been investing in training our trainers. We've been doing this for many years, but I think we're becoming better at it. Our technical and assistance management team have been working together with human resources to come up with courses that are actually more tailored. So foundational courses for all our trainers to change and adapt the way that they train. I'm sure the methods that were used by my colleagues 20 years ago may not necessarily be as effective today as they were then. So, you know, we use different tools now, tools that are more innovative. There's a lot of technological change. There's a lot of different, you know, ways we can train adults. And we know that even there's a lot of research that's gone into the fact that adults learn differently. Some people are more visual, others learn differently. So it's important that our trainers are ready to carry messages that will be able to be delivered to all these different types of learning types. And so this is something that definitely we've learned along the years, and we're trying to do better as we go forward. The regional aspect, which was always very much at the heart of what the regional trade policy courses is all about, we're trying to strengthen that. And how we are trying to do that is by ensuring that, okay, we have content that, of course, we need to have a balance, and so that the content that we have in these courses remains the same across all regions, because remember, this is part of a progressive learning strategy. So this content needs to be relevant to be able to move up to the next level. But at the same point, we need flexibility on the regional aspect. So some regions want to deal with other issues while others don't. So it's about bringing a balance between this element of core content and regional specificity. And when we talk about this regional specificity, we're not talking about just getting a regional expert who will come and talk about, research that's been done in the region, but looking at who is in the room when I'm training and how are these WTO rules being implemented in those specific countries for those participants. So they understand how are the rules being implemented, are they being implemented? If not, why not? So we continue to also try and learn and adapt and see how best we can strengthen this regional aspect. And finally, I think it's just about adapting. We need to adapt to the times. We need to adapt to the new issues that are being involved or that are being addressed in this whole sphere of trade. And as the RTPC unit, we are the ones that oversee to ensure that our WTO experts, as well as the regional experts, are keeping in line with the objectives of the course. So we're kind of the overseers of this. And I think the most important thing, just to end, is that what we're doing when it comes to regional trade policy courses is not about ticking a box or implementing a TA plan that has been endorsed by members, but it's about ensuring impact for our individuals that are trained. And we've seen some of the alumni talking about how it's impacted their lives, but it's not just about impacting their lives as an individual, but also how do they impact the areas in which they work, whether it be back home in policy making, how those policies then reflect back to communities, how the communities can use those policies, and how those policies can impact their lives. Just as some of the alumni now work in the Secretariat, how does their knowledge impact the work that we're doing, and how does that actually help the work of the organization to help the beneficiaries of the system? So I'll end at that. Thank you.
Thank you, Bonai. Let me give the floor back to Mr. Jorge Castro to provide the closing remarks of this event. Jorge, you have the floor.
Thank you, Lisette. On behalf of the ITTC Director, Bridget Chilala, thank you all again for having joined us to commemorate 20 years of the regional trade policy courses. I would like to express our special thanks to our speakers, DDG Zhang, Dr. Patrick Lowe, and Ms. Bonai Muyambo for having taken time to share with us some thoughts about the origins, evolution, and challenges of the RTPCs. Thanks also to our moderator and to our colleagues behind the cameras. I would like to thank as well RTPC academic coordinators for sharing with us the benefits in partnering with the WTO to jointly develop and host RTPCs. Thanks, Professor Artiran, Professor Angongola, Professor Gurfran, Levy, Professor Fe. I would like also to render special tribute here to Professor Francisco Prieto, who was the first academic coordinator of our courses in Latin America from 2005 and 2007, who passed away a few weeks ago. Let me express our more sincere appreciation to the governments of each of our RTPC alumni for having nominated them and for supporting their participation in RTPCs. It's not always easy to let go one of your qualified professionals for several weeks or months to attend these activities, and I trust you have found that it was worth the investment. As you are already aware, a well-functioning multilateral trading system does not only require strengthened trading rules that are non-discriminatory and fair, It also requires an understanding by its members and observers of the opportunities which those rules provide, including the capacity to take full advantage of such opportunities. That is why trade-related technical assistance and capacity building programs are critical to ensuring that all WTO members and observers can actively participate in the work of the organization and benefit from the multilateral trading system. I take the opportunity to thank my colleagues in the Secretariat, in the ITTC, and the different divisions of the Secretariat who have been designing, delivering, and supporting RTPCs for the past 20 years. It's always risky to name a few for fear of leaving someone out. I'll take the risk, and I would like to give a special recognition, starting with the late DG Mike Moore, to Patrick Lowe, who is kindly joining us today, to the successive directors of the Training Institute, and since 2003, the Institute for Training and Technical Cooperation, Claude Mercier, Paul Rolian, Hakim Ben Hamouda, and Bridget Chilala, to the successive heads of the RTPC unit, including René Maillot, Serafino Marchese, Janet Chakarian, Roberto Fiorentino, and Bonet Muyambo, as well as to the many professionals working in the unit, including Dolores Halloran, Aimé Murigande, Fabrizio Meliado, Audrey Berton, Mustafa Secate, Eliana Villacorta, Mandy Sirat, Anne de Luermos, Paris Parisis, Lisette Nonalaya, and Françoise Gay. Also to the dozens of specialized Secretariat colleagues and the regional experts who have generously contributed their knowledge and experience in these courses. A very special thanks to all the donors that contribute to the WTO Global Trust Fund. RTPCs are financed through these generous contributions. Thank you, and we hope to count with your continued support. Finally, most importantly, to our RTPC alumni, including those who have kindly shared with us today how RTPCs have impacted their professional lives. Thank you to Joan, to Mena, to Shankun Lu, to Deborah, to Stephen. The success of RTPCs throughout these years is due to the commitment and professionalism of our participants. I commend you all for your individual and collective efforts. I am happy to know that many members of the RTPC alumni community have managed to stay in touch over the years. I hope this continues to be the case, including through our new relaunched e-learning platform, and that we all look forward to hearing about your activities in the future. With this, thanks again to everyone for have joined us today. Happy holidays to all. Thank you.
Thank you, Jorge. With this, we have come to the end of our program. I thank you all for staying connected. The session is concluded. Thank you. Gracias. Merci.